Hi, everybody, and away we go with another edition of the Stampede Wrestling Show.
This is Bob Johnson. We're going to have an epic show for you fans this afternoon, including former World Wrestling Federation World Champion, Mr. Bob Backlund. He'll be joining us shortly. We will also be bringing on our co-host in a couple of minutes, the associate producer of The Wrestler, Mr. Evan Ginsberg from New York City, as well as very prominent Minnesota wrestling and radio personality, Mr. Glenn Brackett. Before we start our show, we had some sad news. A very dear friend of ours, Mr. Bob Leonard, a longtime photographer with Stampede Wrestling. I knew Bob for about 40 years, great guy. He passed away, and I'm going to bring our Ross Hart and Bruce Hart on. We have a few words to say about passing of Bob Leonard. Ross, welcome to Hart Beat Radio, and Bruce, welcome to Hart Beat Radio.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks very much, Bob. I'd just like to pass my condolences on to Bob Leonard's wife, Winnie, and daughter, Christy, and just a sad day, but Bob Leonard was probably the best photographer in the history of the wrestling business, and he was kind of on board with my dad since the mid-1950s, almost 60 years span, and we're very well respected and very well loved in the wrestling business, so sad to see him, but he certainly had a huge footprint, and my condolences to his wife and daughter.
Yeah, absolutely, Bruce. Bob's impact on the business was so profound. His incredible photography, especially of our famous Stampede shows every year, and his journalism. He was just a terrific writer and also a TV commentator on a number of occasions on the Stampede Wrestling Show, and just his interactions with so many of the wrestlers and our family is unforgettable, and he's had a positive impact on the promotion, our family, and the whole industry, and he'll very much be missed, and our thoughts are with Bob and his family.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'd like to introduce our first co-host this afternoon from New York City. He is one of the great historians of wrestling. He was right in Madison Square Garden when Bob Backlund was wrestling. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Evan Ginsberg. Welcome to Hart Beat Radio, Evan.
Thank you so much. It's always an honor to be here, particularly with the stellar lineup you have tonight. I was there the night that Bob Backlund won the title in 1978 at the Garden, and just very honored to be here, and I'll pass it along to Glenn. Glenn?
Hey, thank you, Evan. It's also a big honor for me to be on this edition of the program with Bruce and everybody. This is like the ultimate cavalcade of pro wrestling stars getting together to chat with one of the greats of all time, Bob Backlund, and I'm honored just to even be sitting back and listening to some of these guys in the next hour or so tell their stories about wrestling in the old school days, and putting the spotlight on one of the great talents of pro wrestling, and a Minnesotan, fellow Minnesotan at that, Bob Backlund. Thanks for having me on.
I've never heard a bad word said about Bob Backlund, and my brothers Brett and Owen and so many other people I knew and had the utmost respect for, like the Funks and Harley Race and Nick Bockwinkel, and they all had nothing but excellent things to say about Bob. And I had a chance to meet Bob in Hawaii way back when, about 1980. He was doing a world title shot for, I think, Liam Maivia and Peter Maivia, and just a super nice guy, but a real credit to our business, and he's always been a great ambassador, and beyond that, one of the really great workers of our generation. So it's a real pleasure to have Bob on, and I know everyone else holds him in the same high regard that I do. So
I'd like to welcome former WWE World Heavyweight Champion and WWE Hall of Famer, Mr. Bob Backlund. Welcome to Hart Beat Radio, Bob.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be there. Bruce, thank you for all those kind words. Appreciate that, and it's very exciting to be amongst you guys and all the other people that you're going to have come on and talk. I love Terry Funk like a brother. He really helped me a lot and babied me along and put me through the ropes and trained me as well as he could. Yeah.
You know, anyone that was down in Amarillo back in the day when you were, that was kind of, rarefied air, as they say. You know, it was, a special time and place. So I'm just looking forward to you and hearing some of the Amarillo stories, and then there's so many other guys that you seem to have history with that were either involved with my dad's promotion or guys that I crossed paths with, including Wayne Coleman, better known to most wrestling fans as Superstar Billy Graham.
Bruce, are you aware that I talked to your father in 1973?
Oh, I remember, Bob, I was sort of a young headbanger then, but my dad had a picture of you, and my dad used to kind of gush. My dad was really, fond of amateur wrestlers. He sort of loved that. He coming from that background, and he sort of, he was looking at this and gushing, and I've got a kid from Minneapolis. I'm not sure if Eddie Sharkey had sent it up or whatever, but my dad was looking forward to having you up here, and then I'm not sure whatever happened, but I remember for years after you attained stardom in WWF and all like that, my dad was always I missed the boat on him. I almost had him.
Yeah.
He was like very proud of the fact that he still had the picture in his office. Must have been you in your younger days, but I almost broke him in and all like that.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. You know, I was getting trained by Eddie Sharkey, and he said, "You're ready to go on the road," and he gave me a list of all the phone numbers of all the promoters, including your father, and your father was the first one I called, and I was at a payphone, and he was talking on the phone, but he was talking pretty slow. I ran out of money, and the phone was dead before I had to ask him if I could come up there and work for him.
I remember that exact same story, because I remember back in the 70s, I was with this black guy named Sylvester Ritter, better known as Junkyard Dog, and he was wanting to get booked in Calgary. We were over there, and he was on the phone with Stu, and Stu got off on some tangent about Luther Lindsay or Sweet Daddy Siki or whatever. And about an hour later, Ritter was starting to sweat bullets, and he had no more money to plug into the phone booth.
Yeah.
But I remember that. I'm sure my dad was probably regaling you with every story about Vernon and Wally and Butch Levy and Joe Pazendak and whoever else that ever come out of Minneapolis, So.
Yeah. I was frustrated. I had to go for a couple more weeks to save some money to make phone calls, but then I jumped to Leroy McGurk. I didn't call your father back. I called Leroy McGurk, and he gave me a date 2 weeks later, and so I took off down there. But some people say it's lucky I didn't have to go down to the dungeon with your father.
I know my dad had another amateur guy up here at that time who I'm not sure if he knew you or not, a guy named Larry Lane, and my dad was. I remember regaling Larry Lane about Bob Backlund, and Larry seemed to speak very highly of you at the time. I'm not sure if you'd ever crossed paths in amateur or whatever. I think Larry's out of Colorado or something like that. But But my dad was always kind of regretting that he had missed the boat on you. But he, I guess he crossed paths with you a few times later. I know he was there the night that Owen threw the towel in or whatever.
Yeah.
But he always spoke very highly of you, and he actually said that you were, kind of, in his estimation, kind of the last WWE champion that, really kind of was, amateur based and had that kind of pedigree that he thought that the world champions should have, So.
I remember going there, and I remember meeting your father, and we had a long conversation But and then having your brother Brett drop the belt to me for that, it was really meant a lot to me. And I was told prior to the match that I was going to be able to keep it for about a year, and I was going to return it to Brett. And I was so happy about being able to, run with that and then come back and have a big match with Brett. I was so psyched.
I feel like
to get
Brett
in the
was
ring
far
with him
far more happy about dropping it to you than he was to Shawn Michaels a few years later. So that's nice to see.
No, but I just wanted to, I wanted to return what he did for me, in '94. I wanted to, do that, have the same type of match and work hard and put the belt back on him. It was in my mind for a long time, and then Vince decided not to do that, and put it on Diesel a couple of days later.
I was pleased that I don't know what all the what had transpired between the era of Vince Senior and Vince Junior, but I was pleased just to see a guy from the WWF era, being given his just reward there,
Mr. Backlund, my first question would have to be, what made you decide to write the book after all these years?
Well, I had a book written in '95, and we couldn't find a publishing company.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to, and I think that was probably going to be the first book ever to have a wrestler ever wrote or had written, and they didn't want to take a chance because there was no history as far as wrestlers and a book. And we couldn't. I got letters at home still from them, that they gave us. They didn't want to take a chance and just write the book. But anyway, and I kind of got away from it. But I always wanted to get the story out in my words of what happened throughout my career. And I didn't think it was. I was getting to be about 60 years old, and I thought, geez, maybe this is never going to happen. And I received a letter in '09 from a gentleman by the name of Rob Miller. He was from New Hampshire. Manchester, New Hampshire, and in the letter it stated that I was his childhood hero, and he wanted to write a book about me. And he went to Yale University, then he went down to Philadelphia and got a law degree. So he was an attorney at the time. And I'm not really too big on attorneys, but I met with him, and I kind of was wondering, he might not like me because I'm just me. Anyway, we met in the Glastonbury Library in my hometown and talked it over, and he was trying to find out if I was really the person that I was as a wrestler, and he found out that I was basically the same person, and we decided to write a book, and we worked on it for 5 years. Before we got it finished. The book's out, and I've been working. I just got done doing a book signing, and I'm in Long Island right now. I'm sitting in a CVS parking lot talking to you guys, but I love the book. I love the things that the book says, and I'm on a sort of a mission. I learned some things in high school and junior high school that were very beneficial to me, and I was able to climb to the ladder of success in the WWF because of the principles that I learned.
What are some of the principles that made you the success you are? Certainly discipline.
Well, I learned something about peer pressure when I was in 8th grade, and I never came to it again in my life. And when I got into the business, it seemed like the people that had been in the business for a while would try to convince you to do drugs with them. I wouldn't do it. I turned them down. I was riding in the car one night with 3 guys. This story's in the book, and they started smoking marijuana, and I rolled my window down, and they rolled it back up. And then I tried to get it open. The window. I tried to get the window open again. It was locked. And I told the person who was driving, "Stop the car. I want to get out." And I didn't care whether they did it or not, but I just didn't want to be involved with it. And they wouldn't stop the car. So I waited. This was after a match in Atlanta. I waited for a little while, and they finally went to a club, and I walked home, and I never got in the car with another wrestler in my life. That was a lesson. Most of the people that tried to convince me to do the drugs in those days aren't alive right now, and I'm here going stronger than ever.
I've got a caller coming in from, it looks like Amarillo, Texas. Caller from 806. Welcome to Hart Beat Radio.
Hey, don't give the rest of my number out to the world now.
The man from the Double Cross Ranch.
That's exactly right. What are you doing, Bobby Backlund? I hear you talking there.
We're waiting for you to come online.
Well, I'm on the line. I'm on the line.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I don't know if everybody out there knows the story, Terry, but I got to tell it. I'm wrestling in Leroy McGurk's territory, and I'm wrestling in Oklahoma and down in Louisiana. And one time, Terry Funk came to the territory. He was going to help out Leroy McGurk in a promotional thing, and I met him there, and he talked to me and this and that, and he said some things, gave me his phone number, and then a couple months went by, and Grizzly Smith was the booker for Leroy McGurk. He comes up to Bill Ash and I said, Mr. Funk wants two guys to come over, and one of them was going to wrestle with Dick Murdoch, and one was going to wrestle with Terry Funk. Bill Ash and I drove to Amarillo TV, and I was going to wrestle Dick Murdoch, and Terry was going to wrestle the other person. But anyway, when Terry saw me, he switched the whole thing around. He took me and I wrestled Terry, and Bill Ash wrestled Dick Murdoch. And then I was shocked to death when he said, Bob Backlund, we're going to go Broadway. I'm going to take over on you, and then you're going to make a big comeback. I wasn't in the business very long at all. I just, I shook, and we went in the ring, and he did that for me. And Terry Funk, I'll never forget you for that. I don't have enough words to explain how I feel about that, Terry.
Well, I was in awe too as soon as I tied up with you, Bobby. That was whenever I decided I don't know if I should be in the ring with this guy or not. But I'll tell you one thing is Bobby was a wonderfully talented individual. Not only did he pick up on the business, but he was just such a good in-ring performer. He continually, from his first day into the business, and you hear of charisma, you hear of a lot of things, but Bobby had something, and he drew a lot of money in his time, and that was I'm giving him all of the compliments I can, and he was a great plus to the world of professional wrestling, and I truly mean that. And I think of the business as an honorable, respectable, wonderful type of business that it was great to me and great to my family, and as long as we had great people in it, it was great to everybody. And Bobby was one of the great ones.
As were you, Terry.
Well, I don't know if was or not. All right. At least I jumped up there with the Harts and ran around with them. I'll tell you that for sure. We all learned from each other, didn't we? We really did.
Sure did. I think that's one of the things, unfortunately, the business is missing these days. That was a big rub-off with guys would go from Amarillo or Minneapolis or Portland or Calgary or those places, and they would kind of spread the gospel and share the the different things about the business.
They were willing to share. That's what was wonderful about it,
and I know guys like
everybody.
You and Bob and your brother Dory you guys are among the greatest ambassadors ever in the business. You guys used to go around and share your knowledge, and you guys were always giving off positive energy, and you guys really enhanced every place you went. And I'm not just blowing smoke. You guys really were. I know my dad had
I'm not really
the utmost
going the other
respect
way.
for all of you guys.
I'm not really trying to go ahead and go the other way or pat on the back or anything, but we had a bunch of guys back then, and I'm sure they do now, but had a bunch of guys that absolutely loved the business, that were a bunch of young guys that were enthralled with the performers that were in it, and they respected them, and they listened to them just as I listened to the people that were in the business before me, and they were there to help you.
You guys were always raising the bars. You guys always raised the bar, and another
Absolutely.
one was your old friend Harley. You guys were the same.
Yes,
you guys,
Harley did.
I know when you guys ever came up to Calgary, everybody was better for it, you know. You guys kind of passed on knowledge and instilled this kind of pride in the business, in these guys, you know, and it really raised the bar, made the business better, and it's unfortunately one of the things that is missing these days, you know. It's not there.
You know, that is true. It is not the same business as it was before. I don't think it ever will be again, and I don't think what is it that is making the difference in the business? And I don't think it's the boys themselves. I think the boys are doing what they necessarily have to do. I think the world has changed, and I think the people in the world have changed, and their attention span has changed, and just about every damn thing we're doing has changed. You know.
Yeah, not necessarily for the better either. I
no.
Sounding.
Yeah, you know, as a lot of I'm an idiot, so I can go ahead and tell you that a lot of the people are idiots too.
You know, you always said you got to get a little bit to give a little to get a little bit, and you know, it's your responsible. You're responsible when you get in the ring to do your best for the business, not necessarily for yourself.
That is so. Well, you do the best for your business, and you do the best for the guy that is in the ring with you. You do the best for every guy that's on the card. You do the best to make it a more successful show the next week. It goes on and on and on, and it's a giving business. If it's you know, I don't see how people can go through the business and not really appreciate the guys they've been in the ring with.
Maybe if you could give us a little background, Bob Backlund, on when did you first go to Amarillo, and who were some of the guys that were in there at that time, and what were some of your fondest memories of that stretch?
You know, when I was out there and I was with Bill Ash, Terry asked me if I wanted to be in the territory. You know, obviously I knew there was, you know, supposed to be a 2-week notification, so I went back and to Tri-City, and I gave my notice, and then I went to Amarillo. Terry and Doyle was there, Dick Murdoch was there, Jim Dillon was there. Was it the Kozaks who were there?
Kozaks were there, yeah.
Yeah. And it was Tommy Chiruta Jumbo Chiruta was there from Japan, and
a lot of great athletes were there.
Yeah,
a lot of
good
people
guys. But it was all guys that, to me, I really got to take advantage and learn as much as I could. And, you know, it built a lot of confidence down there as far as telling a story in the ring and doing it the right way. And it was a great stepping stones for me. They had me going over to Japan a little bit, and then they had me going up to St. Louis a little bit, which was a great experience also. And then they had me going over to, I was supposed to go over to, Terry told me I was going to go over to Florida for 2 weeks, and he came back later and said, you know, it's going to be 3 weeks. And at 3 weeks I said, I'll bring my wife with me. We went to Amarillo, and I never went back.
That was
they never called me. I was waiting for a call.
Waiting for a call. Yeah.
I was waiting for the call.
Eddie Graham kidnapped you.
That story's in the book.
That's exactly what happened. Is Eddie Graham kidnapped Bobby Backlund. He knew that he had a piece of talent there, that it would do him a lot of business. And then later on, as Bobby got kidnapped by New York, you know. But it was all good, though. It was a wonderful life that Bobby was able to live in the business, and he gave back to the business, too, and to the wrestling industry. And just by the person that he was. And that was all very important. You know, back then we were all extensions of who we really were, you know, and our own personalities, and that's who we were. There wasn't any, you know, nobody was casting us in a. We weren't trying to play different parts. We were just extensions of ourselves. Bobby was an extension of Bobby Backlund. I was an extension of Terry Funk.
Yeah. You guys are all amongst the most modest and easy to get along with guys that I've ever seen in the business. It was, even though you guys were at the very apex of the business, you guys never had egos or you guys were never given promoters grief or any of that stuff. You guys were real, a credit to, in a good sense to the business. I know my dad always felt that way about you guys.
Well, your
Bruce,
dad always treated us right, And that's the truth too. He was a great one.
Yeah. Bruce, Terry knows that there's something going on in St. Louis back in the day about the championship, the NWA championship. The process that they were voting, and they were this and that, and then somebody came down from New York and broke the tie or whatever it was. You guys, I didn't know about this till 2 years ago, and I should have known because I was in the middle of it. But they were talking about me and Harley Race or Jack Briscoe, who was gonna work with you and take a title, and I was one of the guys. And they didn't think I could ever be a bad guy because you have to be a bad guy in some territories in the NWA, and you'd have to be a good guy. They didn't think I could handle that.
Who are some of the prime players in that, Terry? Who were like that? Was Muchnick still around, or Barnett?
Sam Muchnick,
Sam Muchnick was around, and Jim Barnett and Vince was around in New York. Bobby Backlund was one of them that was being pushed. Jack Briscoe was being pushed at that time. Harley wound up with the belt. It was, that's a pretty good clientele you got there.
What happened, Bruce, is it ended up to be a tie. I don't know how, but Vince Sr. ended up coming down to the meeting. Vince was down there, and there was a tie. He voted for Harley and took me.
That's what happened.
He took me back to New York.
Yeah.
So
Vince had his eyes on you, Bob.
Yeah.
That's an interesting dichotomy there,
And Bruce, I had no clue about this till 2 years ago when after we interviewed Harley and Terry.
One of the
Bob,
real
you ended
guys.
Up starting.
Yeah, Bruce.
But it ended up with you starting in WWF, I think in 1977, and Vince grooming you to become the successor to Billy Graham because they always wanted a babyface world champion, but not becoming the NWA champion, which was very close to reality, almost happening. That meant you became WWF champion.
It was a quintessential situation because I was not the biggest babyface, but I was a babyface, and it fit me to go with the WWF, and it fit Harley to go with the NWA. Taking on Terry and getting the belt, and it couldn't have been. And I don't know Jack Briscoe. I'm not sure how he felt, but he went down to Florida, I think, after and worked with Eddie.
It might have been the best thing for both federations. Harley had such a good rivalry with both Dory and Terry, such a great history with them. And Bob, you were the All-American babyface that Vince wanted, for the WWF. That was going to sort of replace the ethnic champions they had before with Pedro Morales and Bruno Sammartino, and it was a great success, because you did tremendous business. It was an all-American image that the WWF had never had before, and Harley went on to do great business in his second run as NWA champion. I mean, that was my perspective of it.
And who else
Vinny Jr. part of that?
Somebody that was a real help to Bob Backlund, and a guy that was wonderful and was a big pusher of him was Eddie Graham. Eddie Graham
absolutely.
Really loved Bob's style of work in the ring. And he also loved him because he was a wrestler. And he could go ahead and he could hold up his tights. And he could also go ahead and shoot against anybody that came along. And not only do well, but beat them. Beat the majority of everybody in the country at that time. That was considered an important thing at that time.
I know they all spoke of Bob Backlund as being a really stand-up good citizen, which was important too.
He was. Yes.
He was a real role model and a good guy to have as a champion, just like you and Dory had been. You guys are pretty stand-up, respectful guys. That everybody looked up to. So. But I always heard that about Bob Backlund, that he was really just a good role model and a positive image for pro wrestling, which he certainly was.
And a real athlete.
As I would like to know this, I'd like to know the answer to this, because this is the truth, is who was the biggest draw? Over a long period of time, who really drew the most money in the world of professional wrestling? You've got Bob Backlund, who was up there, who drew night after night after night after night and year after year and drew huge crowds. You have Dory Funk Jr., who was world's champion for 4.5 years and didn't slow down on the road one time. That was drawing night after night after night. And we're talking about huge amounts of business being done. You've got Harley Race, who did the same thing, who had the championship for year after year and time after time. You wonder about it, and you think about the real, true box office attractions, you might be surprised that it may not be the guys you think it is. It may not be Bruno. It may not be the guys that are champions now. It was the guys that hit that road and hit every night.
They always left the territory in really good shape when they left. They'd have such a good match and everything, and business would. I know in Calgary,
educated right.
Business was always great leading up to and great after. A guy like you or Harley or Dory Jr. came up here, So I think that's a part of it people overlook, because you guys really improved and enhanced the business afterwards. So whoever you guys worked with would all of a sudden be now considered a world beater, because they had gone 60 minutes with Dory or Terry or a Harley and I'm sure I heard the same stories about Bob Backlund too. He was whoever he had a match with looked like a world beater, which is really what being a great worker is all about. Is
Bruce,
how you make the other guy look.
Yeah, my matches, Bruce, were built on that, and I knew this from working out and training with Terry and Dory and Jack. But when I was, it was all that I was a constant underdog. And I would always be laying down on the mat with my hand in the air or getting carried out of the ring or whatever. I won the match, but my opponent always won the war. And most of the opponents I had did better after I beat him than before.
That was what you wanted. That's why I went in the ring. I'd go in there and I wanted to leave the town better than whenever I came into it. I wanted to leave it in better shape. I wanted them to draw money the next week. I wanted my friends to be able to go home and say, gosh dang, I know why I'm in the world of professional wrestling.
I think Dory and Terry were my dad always used to say they were the first guys that really took that to the next level as far as, making the territory better when they left, and that my dad was tremendously impressed. And I remember the odd time I went to those old NWA conventions, and all the promoters had that same opinion of like the Funks and the Harleys and them, that they took it to the next level, and they were concerned not just about that one match, but leaving the territory in a good shape. And that was one of the things that really set them apart from everybody else who had preceded them. And I heard the same about Bob Backlund. There's a few guys since.
Bob, you had an incredible reign. I think you were champion 7 years in the WWF, and all the incredible guys you worked with. Everyone from Ernie Ladd to Billy Graham to Don Morocco to Jimmy Snuka, and such a variety of different opponents and heels, and you had great matches with all of them. You continued to sell out. You had great matches and storylines with all of them. Even guys like Peter Maivia and so many. And you had a really good run against so many different champions. And I think you probably exceeded Vince McMahon Sr.'s hopes and dreams of how long successful run he would have with you.
Well, you know what? I really had a great time, and it was actually a little less than 6 years, about 2 months less than 6 years.
Oh, wow, but, that's an incredible run, though.
Yeah, the time went so fast, and I couldn't. When I left the house, I couldn't wait till we get to the arenas because I loved what I was doing so much. And the fact, you talk about hard work in the ring. You don't want to. Some people would maybe take it a little easy tonight. It's a small building, but I just give it my all every night because people paid their hard-earned money to come and watch wrestling, and I wanted them to. I'd be entertained as much as possible. I really got where I really loved the fans a lot.
But were there any particular matches or rivalries that really stand out from your WWF run? Because you had so many.
Well, you know what? One of my favorite matches, and it's a match that I thought I'd never do, is in Delaware. It was against Bret Hart. We had a match where I was going to do a switch at the end, and we had it pretty much it was almost like a college wrestling match for about 20 minutes, and then we did it finish, and I slapped Bret and turned into a bad guy. And after the match, I was looking at the palms of my hands.
Okay.
I didn't think I'd ever do that.
Is that where you did your turn as a heel, Bob?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And
I remember that got over incredibly.
Yeah, it did. And when I asked to go bad, they asked me why. I said because the good guys are lying, cheating, and swearing. Let's be bad by being good. And I was talking about people being responsible for their own actions and working hard and not throwing garbage out the window of their car. And sometimes the truth hurts. And I think some of that stuff hit pretty hard. But I remember doing a promo one time for 5 minutes and I never said a word. All I did is bring the mic up to my lips and bring it back down. But they said I could never be a heel years ago.
Whose idea was that, Bob? Was that Vince Jr.'s
that was mine.
Patterson?
Yeah, Bruce. I went back. They wanted me to be the All-American Boy again. It was in the same time as Joe Frazier came back, and so I went back to be the All-American Boy, and I figured out this isn't going to work. These people, our society had changed a lot between the 80s and the 90s as far as moral values.
Yes.
And that's why I turned into I was saying good things. And people asked me if I went nuts, but I was just so serious about what I was saying, and I believed in everything I was saying. If you listen to some of the interviews, but they were
got over great. It was very convincing.
You did a hell of a job.
It was huge.
Very convincing. You got it over.
Yeah, I actually meant every word I said, but it was very. I know, and you know what? If that wouldn't have happened to you, I wouldn't be doing this interview. You don't know how shy I was. You can ask Terry how shy I was, and it was hard to get a word out of me. I would not be doing it on the radio with you guys today if I wouldn't have been Mr. Backlund. It opened me up a lot.
And gentlemen, we have the great Eddie Sharkey who's waiting to come on.
Well, what were your fondest recollections and memories of Bob, and how were you instrumental in launching him?
Well, I said it then, I'll say it now. He was just a great guy. Easy to train, easy to be around, just a pleasure to know. My partner, Ron Peterson, and I, he's the boxing promoter, and we just had a good time. We had an old gym downtown Minneapolis, and the last of the old dirty, smelly gyms, and we just had a good time there.
And when did you first start Bob out? Did he get some early exposure with you, or did he wrestle with you, or did he just train with some of your guys in your gym, and how did that go?
Oh, he just trained in the gym, and he just drifted off to become a superstar.
Well, everybody needs some launching point, and that certainly seems to be the case with Bob, and he never looked back.
Yeah, it was a good place for that. It was a good gym for that. But everything he did, he pretty much did on his own. He earned it.
How long did you have him before you sent him out to Amarillo or wherever you, Oklahoma or whatever? How long was he with you?
3 months, usually 3 months. he was a fast learner, so
Wow.
he didn't hang around. He just learned what he had, and away he went, and he did very well.
And how early did you see that Bob had some potential or some gift for the business, and what could you see at an early sign with Bob?
Oh, we know he was very talented. He was going places, and everyone liked him, and we never dreamt he'd do what he did. I mean, you know, he did far better he thought he would do, or anyone else for that matter. We're very proud of him. Still are.
Eddie was a really great Mr. Sharkey. I used to watch him in the AWA and on TV, and after college, I played 1 year of semi-pro football, and I found out you weren't going to get ahead in that. You know, there was guys that had been there for 10 years, so I switched around and I started working out at the 7th Street Gym in Minneapolis, and that's where the wrestlers worked out, and that's where Mr. Sharkey had his gym. And I worked out there a few times, and I think there was a time when Eddie and I started talking, and he mentioned something about the gym, and I said, how much does it cost? And I went home and worked for a few weeks and tried to save some money, and gave him the money and went to his program. And it was all sort of history. One day he come up to me and said, geez, I think it's time for you to get out on the road. I had to make some pictures up and some photos and write up a little resume, and I sent them out to everybody, including your father. Yeah.
What was the deal with Vern in those days, Bob? I was often intrigued that he missed the boat on a guy right in his own backyard there. I never knew what transpired.
I don't know. And he used to come. He was very supportive of high school wrestling in Minnesota. He was at the high school tournaments, and he knew me. He mentioned my name on TV a couple times, and just at the he was at the state tournaments, and I was doing pretty good, and he mentioned my name and stuff. So, but I don't know. He had those camps, and he had all those great wrestlers in it. But I missed that, and I didn't really miss it because Mr. Sharkey.
I remember my
did a great
dad had
job.
My dad had Vern up here for some function in maybe around 1980 or something like that, and you were, a big star by this time. My dad asking Vern, how did you miss the boat on Backlund, and Vern never gave him kind of a straight answer or whatever. My dad's always intrigued,
Yeah, I think Vern kind of, when he talked like I did go to school there. But I usually correct that. There's a couple times where I had to correct that I wasn't, But when I left home, everybody was telling me not to go. You're not going to make it. Guys that look like you aren't successful. You aren't Mad Dog. You aren't Butcher. You aren't this or that. And everybody said, you might as well just stay home. You're going to be back in 2 weeks. And I never really listened to it. I kept focused and said, I'm going to do this. And it worked out pretty good. But the weird thing was, in All-American Boys didn't really, at that time, they weren't thinking about anybody like that. But then Vince McMahon Sr. was actually looking for one in '77. He was actually looking for, he said, All-American Boy I want, and then he started calling promoters. And then that thing down in St. Louis happened.
Bob, had you been around Danny Hodge at all? Because I'm sure you must have crossed paths with him or toured with him, and how much of an inspiration or influence did Danny have on you?
Well, we went to Japan one time together, and we did some things with Eddie Sharkey, or not Eddie Sharkey, Eddie Graham down in Florida. We went to a few schools and helped coach wrestling teams. And we got together quite a bit, and what a disciplined person he is, and what a great family man he was, and a great wrestler. They called me to go in that Hall of Fame out in Iowa, the Dan Gable and Danny Hodge. I said I don't deserve to be put in the same Hall of Fame as Danny Hodge and Dan Gable. That was 30 years ago.
I would argue that you do, but you definitely deserve your place along with them, Bob. You're a credit to the amateur and professional industry, and just for all international athletes as well. You contributed so much to the wrestling industry. You really did.
And Danny Hodge was equally modest, just like Bob Backlund. Though he's, if you ever saw Danny Hodge, he was among the quietest, most humble, modest people I've ever met in the business. And you'd never known that he was the deadly shooter that he was. He would never tell you that. So I'm told, Bob Johnson, you have some other guests coming on here now.
Yeah, I've got somebody coming here. I have from area Terry Funk. You're still on the air, right, Terry?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, I have an old friend here of everybody. Welcome to the Hart Beat Radio from Buffalo, New York.
Well, this is the intelligent, sensational destroyer.
Wow.
Anyway, tell that Terry I want to know the next time he's going to have a retirement match.
I think it's going to be against you.
I had one. I'm sorry, guys. I just had one 2 nights ago in Hereford, Texas.
Oh,
you did?
Incredible.
Man, I saw four of your retirement matches in Japan.
No. Yeah, I'm going to tell you the truth, is I'm going to have my real last match pretty soon.
When?
I don't know.
I want to come.
I don't know.
Well, we want to be there to see it, Terry, no matter who you work with.
Yeah, I wouldn't show up.
Terry,
I've been listening
for it, Terry.
Yeah.
I've been listening to the show.
That'll be incredible.
For about an hour, and I would like to have all those wrestlers in my territory, and we would set the world on fire.
Well, you guys already did set the world on fire, and you deserve all the credit in the world for having done so. Every one of you guys.
I would like to mention something to Bob Backlund. I had a phone call from Clark Hatch. Clark Hatch is from your hometown.
Yes, he is. Yep.
So Clark Hatch, for most of the wrestlers have been to Hawaii. He's got a gym in Hawaii where he let the wrestlers work out. And a great guy. And maybe Bob Backlund got a few muscles in his arms working out with Clark Hatch.
Mr. Byers, my first time I went over there, I was running around, and I asked somebody, where's the gym? And they told me I could get to the gym there. And I got to the gym, and it was it said Hatch's Gym. And I got in there, and I was working out, and Clark Hatch came over to me and said a few things. And I asked him, do you know Barry Hatch? And he said, yeah, that's my brother. And Barry Hatch was from my hometown. And I finally realized, geez, this guy's from my hometown. And here I am in Japan working out in the gym for somebody from my hometown. It was like a miracle. Wow.
Well, he said hello to you when he called me a couple of days ago. You know what? You mentioned a lot of things, all you people with Terry and so forth. I wrestled Luthez once in Portland, Oregon, and we had a lousy house. And Lou came to me and says, we're going to work our ass off tonight, so the next time we get back in here, house will be good. So there's a wrestler that was as good as anybody in the business, Luthez, and he said, we work tonight, so I think Terry is the same way, and I think
Terry and Harley all had that same mindset. You know, I think they must have been
schooled
by people like Dory Sr. and all, but they all did.
They all did.
Yeah, if there was a lousy house, they would admonish everyone from the underneath guys on up, go out and work hard tonight, bust your asses, because we might have a better house next time, you know, and that was their mindset back then. And
Bob Backlund, I need to get one of your books. So how do I get it?
Well, I have a website, BacklundEnergy.com.
Bob, what were earliest memories with Dick? I think you must have wrestled him. I don't know if you wrestled him in the States, but maybe in Japan. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in Japan.
So that would have been interesting.
I have some pictures.
Yeah.
I have some pictures of him and I together.
When Dick was under the mask as the Destroyer. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And
he was very over there. He was over like a king over there. They loved him. Yeah.
You always had the American wrestler style, but when you went to Japan, were you still a babyface, or did you work heel there as well? Or I know you worked for All Japan and later New Japan as the WWF champion, but did you change or alter your style over there, or would that not have worked? Because I think people would have expected sort of the classic ring mat style with a lot of amateur wrestling. I suppose even some shooting with some guys that you might have worked with. But did you change your style or technique in Japan?
Well, over there, the people really loved wrestling, and they sort of understood it. So you could get a gut person in a hold and hold them for a while, and they would really kind of appreciate it. And even trying to get the hold on them better than what they have it on them. So I did probably more wrestling than I did over there than I did here, as far as the science of it stuff. So, but
I'll give you an instant, a story about Bobo Brazil.
Yeah.
Bobo Brazil in the late 50s would wrestle in the South. He couldn't wrestle as a babyface because he was black. He came to Japan and he says, "How do you want me to work over here, Dick?" I says, "You work as a heel because every American that comes over here usually is a heel." So we went together for a tag team for about 4 weeks. And it was a 7-week tour. And he says, "Dick, I need something else." So I says, "Bobo," I says, "they give out flowers every night in the ring. You take those flowers and they're chrysanthemums and you can eat them. So you take the yellow one and you bite on it and you chew it up and then you let the saliva run out your mouth." And he says, "Oh, this is working good." He says, "I got to do this more." So we got a championship match against Giant Baba and Jumbo Saruta. It's Jumbo and I. It's our last night on the tour. And he gets the flowers and he bites them. And there's a bumblebee in the flowers.
Oh,
and he screams, "Ow, ow, 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 ow." Baba laughed and Jumbo laughed and the referee laughed, who was Oki Shikina, and I laughed. I'm his partner. So I says, "Bobo, let's start the match." So we started the match by just our bunch of flowers run across the ring. Bop.
Yeah. Well, I was over in Japan with him a few times, and he was a gentleman. I thought he was nice. But you know what? I got a question for you. I wrestled Dusty Rhodes in Osaka, Japan one time, and I was wondering why they put that match together. Would you have any idea?
Who's that question to?
Huh?
Who's that question to? Because you know why they put it together? You know why they put that together? Because they were idiots.
You're right.
I don't know.
Terry, you're
the American dream or the American nightmare.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought they maybe did it to find out who would be the babyface and who would be the heel.
I'll tell you.
I think they wanted to see who was the real.
Yeah, that was with New Japan, wasn't it, Bob?
Yes.
No, you want me to tell you why? I'll tell you why they put that match in there. Because that was a match that they had never seen in America. And they were never going to see that match in America. And they put it on over there because that's they wanted to see the thing, see what would happen in it.
How did you feel about the match? I mean, did you work well with Dusty, and who did they see as the heel or the babyface? Yeah, probably was
the match. You can go online and watch the match. I enjoyed the match. Yeah, you can watch it. It's a big, it's out there. Yeah, just type it in.
That was a match that you would never see in the States.
You'll be surprised about the ending. Yeah.
But that's
you can watch
I think it's a testament to just it was a testament, Bob, to how well you could work with anybody. You could have great matches with any number of stars. You know, if it was Andre the Giant or Nick Bockwinkel or Terry or Dory or Abdullah the Butcher. Or, you know, just about anybody, or Dusty Rhodes. You know, that's just how proven you were.
And those guys, you know, don't kid yourself. All those guys that you mentioned, they drew money. I was looking forward to working with them because I knew I'd get a better payoff. And I bet Bob was the same way. Those guys were stars, you know, and that's who you wanted to be in the ring with.
Bob, I know you had the chance to wrestle Hulk Hogan a number of times. I think earlier when you defended the title and he was a heel, I think he had just come over to the WWF, and then I guess later after he eventually won it from the Iron Sheik. But did you see the potential that Hulk had when he worked with you, and how were your matches with him? And because you had wrestled a lot of big guys like him and Stan Hansen, but how did you feel about your matches with Hulk?
We had a match in Philadelphia. It was fantastic. You know, and that's out there too. It was in the Spectrum in Philadelphia, and he didn't look like the same person in the match. He moved around pretty good. It was you'd be surprised.
You covered so many different roles in your career, heel and babyface, but you were always the classic American performer.
Yeah. Forgive my ignorance, Bob. Did you ever work with Bruno?
No, we never. He never made that match. Vince Senior wanted me to be an individual, and not, you know, like he didn't help train me, or he didn't. He wanted me to bring it in just as an All-American boy, and I wrestled a tag team with Pedro Morales one time, but not Bruno. He didn't have any matches.
Was Bruno? Was he? Did he have much influence back then, or was he already gone from the scene?
No, well, he was still involved, but he didn't have any input as far as with Vince Senior, with who he's going to find. And when we met, I didn't know him from Adam, and he didn't know me from Adam. It took us both about 2 years or 2.5 years to find out that we're pretty much on the same page as far as hard work and dedication and family man and stuff like that.
Bruno must have been pretty impressed with how well you carried the belt, you know, and the whole promotion, really, you know, as the first American babyface champion with the WWF, and I'm sure he was very impressed with how well you had done in that role, because, you know, it was a tough role to follow with him, and Pedro, who had the title for a number of years, and you were very successful at it, but I don't know if Bruno ever gave you any advice or inspiration when you became champion, or if he impacted your career in any ways, or if you just tried to be as successful as him, but obviously in a different style and role, because you worked a pretty different style.
Yeah, I think Vince Senior was privy to that too. He wanted somebody to be the opposite person, and I believe kind of he wanted to have somebody that could have more of an NWA style match than an actual WWF. They were a little more known for the punching and kicking up there, so I think he wanted to bring that into the territory. But Bruno Sammartino, he mentioned one thing to me, and it was pretty important. He said, you know, when you start having matches with these guys, especially after you've been there for a while, you don't want to work your style. You want to try to adjust your style to fit theirs, so everything is a little different, rather than, you know, being too repetitive if you just use your style. So I think that was an important thing to know, or that he told me. I wouldn't have thought of it, but you know, I'd change my style to try to fit whoever my opponent was. Except my hardest match was working with George Steele, because I was so used to, you know, doing a takedown or an arm drag or a hip toss or whatever, and I just couldn't get used to going through all the motions that you would do when you wrestled a guy like George Steele.
Yeah, it's more of just kind of a brawling style, and he's using foreign objects or gimmicks, and yet it drew money. You know, it was successful too, and you know, you worked well against him. But your first matches with Billy Graham, though, and of course he dropped the title to you, and it was the start of a new era for WWF. How did you feel that went? How did your matches go with Billy? And was he pretty gracious about passing the title on to you, because that was his role?
You know, most people knew that he was trying to talk Vince McMahon Sr. out of giving me the WWF title, and a lot of other people were too. Billy Superstar Graham took the belt away from Bruno, and he was selling out everything all over the territory. And even the night of the match, he tried to talk Vince, not in front of me, but he tried to talk Vince out of it. And Vince, and I kind of wondered too. I heard that he was trying to talk him out of it too, so I didn't know Vince McMahon Sr. very well. But he told him that, I gave him my word. I told him that, and I told you that you were going to lose on this date, and I told him he was going to win it on that day, and that's what's going to happen. I'm not going against my word. And I made a promise to the person. And anyway, this territory is based on a babyface, not a heel. So he kept his word, and he became kind of a dad to me after that. For him to do that, I wasn't a proven successful person in the business, and all of the big business that Billy was doing with the title, it was outrageous. And but he didn't think about the money; he thought about his word, and that's how valuable is that when you're working for somebody that you know you can trust them completely.
Sorry to interject here. For Terry and Bob and Eddie and Bruce and everybody, I've got another caller coming in from Atlanta, and I think it's welcome to Hart Beat Radio. Is that who I think it is?
Yes, sir.
I think we have Abdullah the Butcher on here.
Oh, my goodness. That's fantastic. Wow.
Well, when I found out that old man Terry Funk was retiring, he retired so many times it was unbelievable. That's why I had to call in. And then like Dick Byers, who used to be so stiff when he used to hit me in the head, he seemed like he was trying to kill me. And then like Backlund, I mean, he was too good of a wrestler.
I remember being in the ring with you. I was scared to death.
Wow.
Hey, I'll tell you, like, I was scared to death to get in the ring with you, because I thought maybe you might be sick of me.
we were feeling mutual, and I was scared.
That's probably why you worked so well together.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
So those were the good days.
So, Abby, where did you first come across Bob? Which promotion or territory would that have been?
I think it was Atlanta, Georgia. I think he came into Atlanta, Georgia. And then I seen you in Japan, too, right?
Yes. We were over there a few times,
Yeah.
Bob, what influence did Abdullah have on you? And obviously you worked with him, and did you learn just a lot about selling or making an incredible comeback? Or obviously Abdullah was a different style of heel to work with than a lot of the others you did.
He was more like, not like him in any way, but like a George Steele kind of guy where you were out there fighting for your life.
Yeah,
so it was quite an experience, and I literally was worried about it when I got into the ring. He was a monster, and I'm just an all-American boy kid trying to do my best, and I was literally worried about it.
That's how convincing Abby was, and that's just how much he was over. That a lot of guys were intimidated by working with him.
Yeah, and you know what? He was like a kid touching me. I didn't even hardly know he was there. He's a real professional, and I gotta really respect him for that. Yep. That's
incredible. You're both legends in your own rights. You really are, and just as Terry and Dick are. Yeah.
My dad always used to say, if there was more Abbeys in the business would be a hell of a lot better than it was, So.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Terry Funk, so Terry Funk was like another Abdullah. He was crazy.
Oh, yeah. You and Terry just did tremendous business in Japan and Amarillo, all over the states
everywhere
where you
worked.
It was incredible. Everywhere you went, it was awesome.
And they were the inspiration for a whole new generation of workers too. All of you guys were. You guys really raised the bar. So.
This is Dick Beyer. I want to say something about Abdullah the Butcher and...
Oh, Dick Byers. You remember the time, Dick? You remember the time when you told me to punch you in your face.
Yeah.
So you could have a black eyes. You could have black eyes. And I was punching you, and I was.
You didn't do it.
Then when you went to the TV station, you didn't have no black eyes.
Anyway, I wanted to say that when I was in Japan on one of my tours, the Butcher had a retirement match with Terry Funk, and I thought it was the last retirement match it was going to be. Now, Butcher, he's got another one coming up.
Terry Funk.
Have you got one more match in you? Jeez.
Will never retire. Never. Same as Abdullah, I will never retire. Then like Terry Funk will never retire. And then the Destroyer will never retire. The long as we can move, we'll still be there.
Bob, I know when you went to WWF, you were managed a little by Arnold Skaaland. What was your real relationship with Arnold? Was he just sort of your in-ring manager, or did you have a real relationship or connection with Arnold, or did he inspire you or influence you in any way, or was that just the role that you had in the ring?
It was basically, he went in the ring with me in Madison Square Garden, and they used his name, and but I really respected him. He was a pretty stout person, and he could handle himself.
Yeah.
And he back in the day, he used to go to the YMCA or the New York Athletic Club, and they used to, go out on the mat and wrestle, and just take turns. And you got to respect somebody that did that in the business. That was very rare, but especially in our day. But he was a real tough guy. Yeah. If you grabbed a hold of him, you knew you had a hold of somebody. Yeah. Sure. Yeah,
for sure. Well, I guess he'd been successful in that role as sort of the manager, or maybe even mouthpiece a little bit for Bruno when he was champion, and then they did it with you. And I don't know if that I think helped you in any way, but he certainly didn't take anything away from you. It didn't take away from your interview skills, which you just got better and better at, and your performance in the ring. He stayed more in the background and didn't eclipse you or overshadow you, but I would say he complimented you well.
No, I was happy to have him there, and it put it at a little level there that I had the same manager as Bruno. It compared me a little bit to Bruno. And yes. Bruno, you can't imagine how much he was respected in that territory up in the New York, Boston, Philadelphia. He was really he was really over strong.
Mr. Backlund, I was at Madison Square Garden the night you won the title from Billy Graham. What was that like for you?
He actually asked me, are you thinking about getting into the business? In the YMCA in Fargo, North Dakota in 1970. So I said, no, I wasn't really thinking about it. We did our workouts and we left. I never saw him again. But it was a really weird feeling to be standing in Madison Square Garden with 27,000 people between the Felt Forum and the Garden, sold out. I'm looking at this guy that I met in Fargo, North Dakota, and I'm in the ring. I'm going to take the WWF belt from him. It was unbelievable. And then, he was trying to convince me to get into the ring back in the 70s when I met him. But now he's trying to talk Vince Sr. out of putting the belt on me.
Wow.
It's interesting. Wow.
There's one thing that I want to say about Billy.
It kind of came full circle, didn't it, Bob?
Yeah. But I want to say, Billy didn't want to do that. And Billy was Billy in the ring. He didn't have a big repertoire of things, but he never let up in the ring. He didn't say, I'm not going to work hard and, try to, he worked as hard as he could. Every match we had, after he built, we had a lot of return matches and went around the territory, and he never, petered out and just, he worked hard. And,
you did tremendous business with Billy, and it was a very successful transition, him dropping the title to you, and I think you certainly exceeded his expectations, and any doubters or cynics who didn't think you could get over as champion following the footsteps of Billy or Bruno or Pedro, who were very ethnic champions, with Italians and Puerto Rican communities, and you certainly fit the role that Vince wanted, which was an all-American champion. It was an experiment, or I guess a bit of a gamble for Vince, and it certainly paid off for Vince Sr.
Yeah, and he had that vision, and and he look how many times, I went in for that first taping, and he put me on a lot of tapes before I actually went in there and, and had that match with Billy Graham on February 20th of 1978.
Did you have many matches with world WWE or NWA champions or world champion, any of that kind of stuff? Or?
Oh yeah, well I wrestled Nick Backlund, up in it was up in Canada, and I wrestled
like an AWA.
Yep. And then I wrestled Harley a bunch of times down in Florida, in St. Louis.
I think you had one with Harley in Madison Square Garden too, didn't you, Bob?
Yes.
Where we both worked as double champions, and
yes.
I think that was in 1980 maybe, but yeah.
Yep.
It was really neat how the different federations were working together, and it was good business for everybody, for WWF and NWA and AWA at the time. And you were all great champions. Do you see any of today's stars that have potential, or anything you like in any of the boys you see today, or in Japan or overseas? I'm not sure if you follow too much of it today, but
yeah, I'm not a very good sit down watch TV guy. I hardly ever watch it, but I know what's going on, and I know that that the guys. The art is gone as far as in the ring and listening to the people, and it's getting so there's not too many people around that could actually, because that's something you can't learn in a gym. You have to get in there with somebody that knows that skill and can hand it over to you, like it happened so many times years ago. But the art is gone, and when I watch the matches, I can't watch very many because they're so different. And but I really respect the guys for what they're putting their bodies through, and they're beating themselves up by doing all these things off the top rope and with the chairs and the tables, and everybody must be have injuries all over their body.
I remember a few years ago when I was in Phoenix at WrestleMania, and I was taken aback at they were giving you 20-page scripts. When you first went to WWE, wasn't that scripted, was it, Bob? Or?
No, nothing was scripted. And then even when they went to, got Vince Jr. took over, I told him I can't do an interview. You can't. I'm not gonna. I got to do my own. I can't make somebody else's words mean anything. It's got to come from my heart, or So I was the only one in the '90s. There, I was the only one that was non-scripted. I couldn't. And who could write what I was saying?
Oh yeah. I always found when you scripted everything, you're taking the fans out of it, which is the antithesis of what it should be. It's your whole objective is to get the fans into it. But if they don't feel like they're cheering or they're booing or anything has any bearing on it, then it seems like the whole thing is missing the point. But
and they started like. When you're doing an interview now, you look at the announcer. When we did interviews, we looked right in the camera and talked to the people that were sitting in their couch. Tell them that we were going to beat that guy or we weren't going to beat that guy. And I think that was important to address it right through those customers out there sitting in their homes from the TV camera, rather than talk to an announcer.
Oh yeah, I think it was pretty much all improv. As I recall back in the day, I'm sure Terry and Abby and Dick would tell you the same, but. I'm told that guys in the WWE these days, if they don't have the script, they're almost like panic-stricken, like, what are we going to do? We may have to actually think on our own or do something on the fly, which is, hard for me to fathom, But.
Yeah. When something comes from the heart, that you can make that mean something to people.
I'm really looking forward to reading your book, and I'll just say on my own behalf, it was an honor to speak with you and hear some of your memories, as well as Terry's and Abdullah's, and we're definitely celebrating the impact you had on the business, Bob.
Thank you. The business was very good for me, and it was quite a road, and something that we all will never forget. Yeah.
Thanks very much for everything, and for the enormous contribution you've given to the wrestling business, and I'd just like to take the opportunity to also thank all the guests, including Terry and Abby and Eddie and Dick and Evan and Glenn, just for lending themselves. It's an honor and a privilege for me to even be part of this.